All right, welcome everyone to the August 1st Dev Call. Dan is not here today, it's just me, so please save your spiciest questions for next week when Dan is back. We'll get started. We actually have a fairly short agenda that we're getting through. So want to start off with Hubble, talk about some of the things that we've been tweaking recently, one of the incidents that happened this morning. Then about some of the other things that Horsefax and team have been working on with composer actions and signed in with Farcaster. Finally, a note on channels, more of an update. We already shared this yesterday on Farcaster, but just recapping some of the things we're thinking about there. Finally, we'll do Warpcast updates. So talking about some of the new user improvements, feed improvements, and DC improvements that we've been grinding away at. And of course, if there's questions that are not on here, we'll take them at the very end if we have time. Okay, great. So on the Hubble side of things, one thing we've been working on is updating a bunch of core dependencies. So we've just been doing some maintenance work, moving up libp2p, VM, and stuff. So if you're using hubs, you'll see more patch versions coming out. Do note that they might be a little bit more unstable. So do your own research on whether you want to upgrade. We will be testing them out slowly, and then we'll be encouraging people to update once it's safe. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us if you see a new patch version published. We are going to do testing ourselves, though. Second thing, there was an incident last night or this morning, depending on your time zone, with messages not reaching other, like messages that were created by users on Warpcast not reaching other apps. We've done two things. One is we've band-aided over this. So we actually had Warpcast write directly to a bunch of other hubs on the network, like Airstack, Nanar, and a few others. So data is flowing through now, and you shouldn't see any issues. This is sort of a crutch. We're going to turn this off at some point. The root cause seems to be that one of our primary hubs stopped broadcasting gossip messages at some point last night and just started failing on that. Other hubs are working, but there's just like one that seemed to go down. We don't know why yet. It might have to do with some of the libp2p upgrades we've done. It might not. So we're tracing that right now. But the network should be back. It should be functional. Everyone should be getting messages in real time. If that's not happening, let us know. And then we will fix the root cause, likely ship an update, and then turn off the auto broadcast so everything is flowing through the hubs again. Any questions on that or any things that folks want to know more about? Yeah, Jason pointed out we didn't pick it up in status.warpcast.com. So that's a good point. And the reason it didn't pick up is because Warpcast was actually publishing to hubs just fine. So Warpcast writing all these messages down to hubs, and then one of the hubs, for some reason, the primary one we write to, was not syncing it with the other hubs. So this is kind of a very narrow hub-to-hub failure, which we are developing other metrics to measure on the hub side. But it's sort of expected that this dashboard wouldn't catch it. It's also why we didn't get alerted about it and why it took a while for us to get started on it. So one of the things we're thinking about, we actually started on this last week, but one of the things that we want is actually a sync score where we can sample two arbitrary hubs and say, hey, how many of the messages are actually like in sync between these hubs? And if it falls below a certain threshold, especially for critical hubs in the network, that actually alerts someone on the team and we can go look at it. So kind of grinding down the reliability chain to like dealing with some of these more esoteric edge cases. Cool. There's a question on, would it be helpful to build a multiplexer over hubs for writing? I believe we've had a multiplexer and we might have switched back and forth for a couple of design reasons. The broader issue here is, I think, even with a multiplexer, like let's say we were testing a change with libp2p on our hubs and all of our hubs started failing, like this would have still happened, right? And I think the first thing that we want, I think the most important thing was, if we had been alerted about this, like the moment it happened, like we'd gotten pager duties and our team was woken up, we could have patched over it in like 15 minutes and everyone would have gotten data. The core failure was a lot of this was broken overnight. None of our pager duty systems went off, and the incident kind of ran for like 8 hours before like somebody woke up and saw Slack messages and was like, we need to fix this. So that's the first thing that we want to fix is like, if something is broken, people on our side are getting woken up, and then we're pretty confident we can patch it and work our way down. Cool. We'll post an update with like actual details once we figure out the root cause. We still don't know what exactly it is, but incident should be resolved in terms of data is flowing, and then we'll post another update on Farcaster when that happens. Moving on to composer actions. So Horsefax and Perl have been shipping a bunch of improvements to composer actions. I'll turn it over to Horsefax to give the quick update on what shipped this week and what's on deck for the future.
Yeah, so actions on web shipped this week. You can now see them in the web composer, discover and interact there. And then we're working, the immediate next steps are working on search and discovery. So we should see search in the mobile app pretty soon. And then more rankings and categories and ability to discover some of these. And then in the medium to longer term, we're going to be moving more of that discovery over to other types of actions. So what we see with composer actions, hopefully we will continue kind of bringing to other types of actions and discovery of other interactions throughout the site. Yeah, if you're building a composer action, we have a dev chat we can add you to. We have a form. We're trying to go through that Google form for folks who have built a new one and want to submit it and want us to take a look. And usually Pearl and I will take a look at the action and then maybe give you some design feedback. And then if it looks good, we can approve you and add you. So if you are working on one, please reach out to me or Pearl and we'll get you added to the chat and give you the docs and happy to review.
Cool. Horsefax, there's a question on mobile debuggers.
Yeah, good question. We haven't really built any mobile action dev tools yet. We'll have to think about that. I don't have an answer for that, but yeah, we'll think about that internally. For now, use the web debugger, and I'd say we may add the ability in that web debugger to change the aspect and make it as close to mobile as possible. But yeah, so far we haven't exposed too many dev tools on mobile, so that would be something new for us. But yeah, we can think about that. If people are having tons of issues developing for mobile, let me know. But I think the format is pretty simple and it's all web standard stuff. So what you see on web should be quite close to what you see on mobile.
Like for me, the most interesting also is just being able to access the web routes on mobile. Like with all of the dev tools, it just redirects on mobile to the general landing page. So I can't even just go and look at it from mobile. Like if it was just in the browser, not the Webcast main app, I wouldn't even care. I would just log into Webcast web through the phone Webcast app and then be able to debug that. But that also may be a quicker fix.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we'll think about this and see what we can do there.
Cool. Pearl, anything you wanted to add on that before we move on to sign in?
Make sure to have a look at the guidelines for the experience and test your composer action on dark mode and light mode. That's going to save everyone a lot of time so that we're not doing a lot of back and forth.
Sweet. Cool. We're very excited about composer actions. There's been a lot of cool stuff that has shipped in the past few weeks, and so we're going to double down on making this experience better. So if you have any feedback, you know where to reach us. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. There's one point about mobile debuggers being important from the Nook team. Would be cool to get support for a limited set of pop-ups. Yeah. Okay. No active questions, so we'll talk about sign in with Farcaster. Thanks for pointing out the typo. One of the things we've heard from a few folks is QR sign-in issues, which we've been trying to debug why some people are running into issues where they're not able to scan their QR code. Current working hypothesis is one source of those issues might be QR codes generated if you're using Privy's toolkit. So we've been working with the Privy team to see if changing the way the QR codes are generated improves that. If you know that you are not using Privy and you're using the Warpcast QR codes and those are also broken, please let us know. We'd love to hear about what device you're using, what camera you're using, etc., to understand why that's happening and see if we can improve that. Horsefax, anything else you want to add on sign in?
Yeah, I'd say broadly there are three potential issues, maybe more, but yeah, one is simply the act of scanning a QR code with your mobile phone. I think that is actually a difficult UX for a lot of normal users, especially since we don't have a QR code scanner built into the Webcast app, right? So actually open phone, go to phone, scan QR is quite difficult for a certain class of users, and so for a lot of people, that's probably the issue in many cases. It's just it's difficult to know how to sign the QR. Second thing is legibility of the QR code, right? So a chunkier code can help. We made that change in AuthKit, and that seems to have reduced a lot of complaints about legibility of the code. So if you're generating those codes custom, like make it as make it big and legible and chunky if you can. And then the third category is occasionally relay instability. So from time to time, hub instability, because we load verifications as part of the channel connection. If hubs are having instability or down, or there's high latency to a hub, the relay uses a fallback. So we use a primary hub and a fallback hub. But if both of those are down for some reason, that can cause hub instability. So I'd say those are like the three most common causes of errors in signing with Farcaster. And the third one, actually, one more maybe is latency using the auth kit library. So I know there was a PR that John from AutoMod opened up to fix that, and we'll get that merged hopefully today.
Cool. Questions regarding composer actions. Would it be possible to create an action that makes all music links on Farcaster a Sonata widget player that plays the song? I'm not sure off the top of my head. We can take a look at that and let you know. Cool. Okay. No other questions. Let me give an update on channels. So Dan posted this cast yesterday, which summarizes how we're thinking about the current state of channels. So the TLDR is we're in a bit of a holding pattern as we're thinking about what's next for channels. Some things are working really well. People are creating lots of channels. It is bringing in content to Farcaster that didn't exist otherwise. And people are really excited about some of the sub-communities that they've created. What's working less well is channels haven't quite hit this point where they are clearly working and generating very good content. And there's sort of two litmus tests we have for it, right? One is if you follow a channel, can we, Warpcast, just take all of those channel casts and put them in your home feed and have them be useful to you? And right now, for a lot of channels, the answer is no. When we do that, both qualitatively, when we eyeball feeds, and quantitatively, when we run experiments, it actually results in a lot of low quality casts getting into your feeds. And the root cause of that seems to be that moderation is quite difficult for channel hosts to get to a point where all the feeds are high quality. Even though we've made a lot of progress with AutoMod, AirStack, Bot-or-Not, and all these other moderation tools, it doesn't seem like we've quite made it as easy as it should be for channel owners. And it might not be a lack of tools or a lack of features. It might actually be something about how channels are designed or how users are encouraged to interact with the channels. And so one of the things we want to do is before we just start decentralizing this thing that is not like fully working yet, we actually want ourselves to hold ourselves to this really high bar of like, do we think that this like semi-decentralized prototype feels really, really good and is actually generating content that is high value and bringing in users to communities? Like, have we actually hit this bar of creating really interesting, cozy corners? And we want to hit that before we go and do this. So expect us to talk in the next dev call about like some other experiments that we're running on the product side. We're going to go back to the drawing board and think about what these should be. They're likely minor tweaks to how channels work, how content is put in, how moderation is done, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're one of the teams that build moderation tools, you'll hear about, we'll reach out to you and share our thinking on this as we get a one-pager put together. Let me pause there and see if you have any questions from folks. One question on viewer-based signals. If I follow a channel, I want to see casts in there from more users than I follow and users they follow, plus any popular casts in the channel. Yeah, we played around with a bunch of these. We haven't found anything that's been like a winning formula. Like some of them work in some channels, some of them don't work in other channels. And the best we found is like we've actually had to do a lot of manual curation. So one of the changes we shipped on Warpcast recently, just to get further down the list, is we've actually moved more channel data into your feeds. But when we tried to do this in any kind of automated heuristic graph-based follow way, it didn't really work. We literally had to go and manually label a bunch of channels and develop different heuristics for each channels to be able to like pull out data and actually stick it into your feed to make that useful. And that's obviously not going to scale. Like we need to get to a point where we actually need to be able to say like, hey, here's a heuristic or algo you can run, which is like, pick the moderated cast from a channel and just put it into a feed. And that this will actually be like relevant to most subscribers of this channel. Cool. Recording of the last dev call isn't on YouTube. I will upload it right after this call. I may have forgotten to do that. Would like to run experiments on how channels work that paid fans can cast into. Yeah, I actually think that's a cool idea. So that's one of the things that we'll definitely pencil out how we can make that work. Manan, you had a question?
Yeah, this is about channel decentralization getting pushed back. What that means is that we won't be able to write follows, like channel follows, through other clients. Is there a way to kind of just have like a Webcast API such that we can submit a signed message from a particular signer saying that I want to follow this channel, and then Webcast can kind of like make that happen?
Yeah, we actually had a couple of requests about this week, and Dan and I were actually talking about it this morning. The thing that we're trying to balance is we're happy to expose that. We want to be transparent that it is a high change surface area API. Like in a week from now, we might change how that works or change some of the parameters that works. But as long as people are willing to accept that, like, hey, this is a surface area that might move around a bit, I think we're okay exposing some controls for people to write and read from that.
Yeah, I think for us as a platform, like we leave it up to the developers to pick. But from the perspective of like providing this as a capability, I feel like it'll also help any other clients that are focused on like channel discovery as a mechanism to drive engagement. So being able to kind of suggest channels and so on might be helpful.
Cool. We'll talk about it internally. I think there's probably something we can do that's like an 80-20 that like unblocks you guys. So we'll get back to you on that for the next call.
Thank you.
Where can users submit bug complaints? Everywhere you'd like. You can drop it into this chat if you have bugs that you want us to see, and we'll take a look at it. But in all seriousness, you can always DC us, post on Webcast and tag me or Dan. We often triage and look at those things. We can't promise that we'll respond to every single one, but we try to look at a whole lot of them. Cool. Trying to see if there's any other questions in the chat. Add dev call announcements as events.xyz. Yeah, we should actually look into doing that now. Let me see if I can get that set up. Maybe we'll have it for next time. Cool. Jason had a point about it. Still think the more we distribute the problem solution, the better. What was this related to the channels thing, Jason?
This is just on channels, and like if I might, it's like, you know, it's like we just spent the last 3 months at Airstack building what we launched this week, Moxie, and that was based on what you guys like. We're playing catch up to you, right? So we built that based on what channels has been for a long time. So now if you go change it again, it might affect what we just spent the last 3 months building. So like, I just think like everything you guys do has a ripple effect. And so we build something we think will make what you already have built much, much better. And so before go changing, I think like, let's give that a chance to kind of propagate and see how it works. And others can do the same thing as well. And then the more you distribute the problem set overall, so the more I'm very much in favor of even decentralizing channels as it is today. The more you decentralize that, the more people can also help solve the problems.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, we want to be transparent on what parts of Farcaster are like ossified and stable, and like publishing cast, writing cast, messages, all of this is like green light. This is not going to change in any dramatic way. I think with channels, we've been very transparent for the last year that like things are not set in stone. We are still running experiments. They're not fully decentralized. So I'll say 2 things. One is like, you should expect us to like keep trying to change things, but we're not going to change things so radically that they will break developers. Like we want to have an open conversation with you guys. We'll come to you first and foremost with like, here's what we're thinking. And if you have feedback on like, hey, can you do this instead of this? We'll factor all of that in. We want to strike the right balance between, we don't want to paper over things that people are building in the ecosystem, but we also think it's very important that we find the correct primitive and actually start decentralizing it very soon. And so we'll make sure that we walk that line well. Cool. Question, Horsefax missed the part if you've been able to reproduce the sign-in with Farcaster issues. Works good with Privy. Maybe we can follow up with you offline on that, Diligent, and see if we can get anything taken care of there.
Yeah, let's follow up on that.
Cool. There's a bug complaint. I'll follow up on that async, Nick. If you want to actually throw your Farcaster username in there, I can actually like DC you about it. What happened to external data FIP? I think that's in the works. I think trying to remember the sequence of what happened. So we pulled out the long cast from that, which I think landed and has worked reasonably well. I don't think we got very excited about any of the other use cases for external data just yet, or like nobody's really been championing for them. So that's kind of been in a holding pattern. But if there's any things that people are excited about or want to push forward, especially if you are a developer who would use that to build something interesting, we'd love to hear from you. Plans on enabling channel handle change. Not in the short term. I think it's something we'll do in the medium term, but probably not in the next month or so. If you do want a channel change and it's like super important, you can let us know, but we don't have any plans to ship a feature right now. Will there ever be an opportunity to modify feeds within a channel that I own? You should be able to do that today. That's kind of what plugging in with AirStack and AutoMod and all these other tools do, if I'm understanding the question correctly, Daniel.
Hi. So I'm referring more to like replies within a specific conversation. Sorry if that wasn't clear. So
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like showing what top level information is visible, but also just being able to dynamically moderate
Yeah.
replies to a post.
That's a great point, and that's actually one of the shortcomings of the current design, which is why we are going back and thinking about how to do this, which is that people actually want moderation on all of the content, not just the top level replies. And the current architecture of using likes, like you could probably work a way to do this, but it is very clunky. And so that's one of the reasons where we're thinking about how can we actually express that data more efficiently. So TLDR, it is a priority for us. We are thinking about it in the next design. Horsefax, there's a question on FNAME smart contract signature verifications for you.
Oh yeah, DM me about that. I think that's ready to merge. Thanks for that, PR.
Cool. Before we go on to Workcast, another shout out. I don't know if Daryl's on the call today, but thank you, Daryl, for getting a VM PR out to upgrade VM on all our hubs. It's actually been kind of cool. We've been able to set out bounties for like important hub changes or upgrades, and people have been doing it. So if you are interested in doing more of this stuff, let me know. We're happy to hook you up with some tasks. All right, moving on to Workcast updates. So a few things that we've been working on. 2 weeks ago, we talked about changes to the new user experience, where previously when you started the app, the way it would work is you would pick some interests. Warpcast would recommend some people that we thought were relevant to those interests, and you would follow those people when you started the app so that you had like a built-out feed. The list was dynamic, so you wouldn't always follow the same people. It depended on what you chose. But the way we've changed it now is we've made it even more dynamic, because the problem with that list was, let's say you didn't like somebody that we suggested, you would actually have to go do work to unfollow them. And that's frustrating for users. And most people just don't do the work, right? They just kind of live with it and their feed isn't great and they might not have a good starting experience. So the way it works right now is we will actually, when you get started, based on your interest, recommend a set of casts from users, but we will show you casts from them like 10 or 20 times. And if you don't follow the user and you don't interact with the user, we'll just stop showing you stuff from them and we'll show you casts from other users. And we'll keep doing this until you hit a certain minimum number of followers, like 50 or so, that actually starts building a feed. So there's this like algo-based thing that helps you build your first 50 following by exposing you to a whole bunch of different people who are posting on the platform. And then it kind of switches back into the normal feed. So this rolled out last week. If you've had any friends or people who signed up and gone through the new user experience and you've had feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Hopefully this also does, this also now picks from a wider set of users. So you should have a more, like we're going to expose more new users to more existing users on Farcaster and distribute follows a lot more evenly, again, based on interests. Cool. There's a couple questions about other topics. Jason, we'll look into that. Let me, I know Sanjay's actively working on this, and Shane said that went live at 9:45, but we will double check on that right after this call and let you know if we see anything funky from our side. Question on, have you any plans or have you considered replacing frames with iframes? We've thought about the general problem surface of making frames faster and more responsive. We haven't yet locked down on a solution that we are excited about. I think iframes are cool. They do have some challenges on mobile, particularly when you have a bunch of them in the same feed and need to think about render performance. So they're not like an obvious win. And it seems like we would need more constraints to make that work. The TLDR of how we're thinking about it is all of our energy is focused on cast actions right now, or sorry, composer actions. And once we're done with that, we're going to start thinking about like going back to frames and how can we make them much more performant and much more responsive. And the broad two directions we've thought about are, one is like more structured data. Like, can you actually provide more data that can be rendered on the client, either as like, HTML, CSS, or even like more narrowly typed where you can define like headers and stuff and we can render it. So it's super fast and no images are in the path. Or can we just invert control and give you an iframe and you can load whatever you want, which would be really cool, but has a bunch of performance considerations that we don't have a good solution for yet. But expect like Horsefax and team to be doing a lot more thinking on that and sharing updates soon. Horsefax, anything you want to add on that?
No, that's a good summary.
Okay, cool. Feed improvements. So one of the other big things we announced this week was we've removed Power Badge from the UI. And the thinking behind this change is twofold. One is Power Badge has sort of made it implicitly a little harder for new users to break through. I think people have gotten very trained on if you have the badge, you're in. And one of the ways to get the badge is you need a lot of engagement from other Power Badge users. And by definition, as a new user, you don't have that. So you're kind of stuck in limbo. The second thing is we've actually stopped using Power Badge for a lot of features within Warpcast. So once upon a time when we launched it, when you turn on priority mode, Power Badge was what defined whether notifications would get into your inbox. It's what defined whether casts would show up in your feed. And the reason we did this was there was a lot of low quality content, and this was the easiest way for popular users to filter this out. Over the last few weeks, we've actually removed a lot of that. So we don't do Power Badge filtering in feeds anymore. We don't really do Power Badge filtering in notifications. We still use them in a couple of places in the UI, but we actually have plans to kind of remove it and really rely on the spam model and low quality users to filter that out. And so we just think it's like less and less essential at the Warpcast level, and we're gonna move towards not showing it there. We do know that developers are reliant on Power Badge today. And so like I know Bountycaster uses it, Boy uses it, and a bunch of folks use it. So two thoughts on this. One is we are still going to make our Power Badge data available over the API. So Nanar, Airstack, anyone else who consumes this will still have access to it for the next month. What we want to encourage teams to do is start coming up with your own Power Badge algos. I literally think you could build one in a day. It's very simple. Here's how we did it. We basically found like, a few hundred seed users and said like, hey, we know these are high quality users. Who do they like? Who do they follow? Okay, then you get another set of like 1,000 users. You kind of review that and you say, are these all mostly high quality users? You might make some tweaks. Then you do another graph stretch out and another graph stretch out. And eventually you hit a point where you're not finding quality users anymore and you stop. And you tweak a bunch of parameters, right? You may look at follows, you may look at likes, you may look at replies, and we constantly change this over time. But that's the quickest way to like start from a graph of trusted folks that you know and build out to a Power Badge algorithm. And what we're going to do is like for the next month, support teams use our APIs, maybe copy our initial Power Badge graph to seed your algos. And we want to encourage people to go develop their own version of this that they can then offer at the API level to other apps. So hopefully Nanar, Airstack, and others can make this easily accessible to other folks from there. And yeah, it's somebody posted a link to OpenRank. Like we draw a lot of inspiration from like the early like Google PageRank systems and things like that. I think OpenRank has also done a bunch of work on this. So our hope is there will be a bunch of API providers offering different kinds of Power Badges. And there actually are different flavors of this, right? Which I think is most important. Because what Warpcast cares about when we are filtering users is who is producing content that other people like, because we want to recommend them to new users and other things. What Bountycaster and other apps might care about might be slightly different. They might be like, who is a real person, or it might be like, who is someone you can trust. And so there might actually be different versions of this that apps can offer, which let you focus on different groups of users as you. Cool. Any questions on that? Okay, great. If you're a developer using Power BI, you have any questions, let us know, or any concerns, but we will support it through the month of August, and then we'll work with Naynar and Ashstack to make sure that they have some equivalent, if they do need access to the Power BI data. Okay, last update is one more minor update on feed improvements. I posted this in the channel in Farcaster updates, but we are now delivering more channel content to users. So we've done a bunch of heuristics. We found some smart ways to identify if you follow a channel, but you don't follow a user, what kind of stuff can we bring into your home feed? So now posting in a channel gives you even more distribution than it did before. We're going to continue to tweak the algorithm, but we A/B tested it, had positive results for users, and we rolled it out earlier this week. Last note on DC improvements, we are continuing to grind away at DC improvements, both on performance and polish. There's still a lot of stuff to be done here, but Goksu and Gabriel have been heads down on this. If you run into any bugs with DCs, either perf, slowness, jankiness, please let us know. We are really, really focused on getting that to a good place. Okay, there's 2 comments in chat, which I'll try to read. Yep, there's an idea from Samuel about like conditional caching for frames or like prefetching or depending on however you want to think about it. I think that would be really cool. Like that's an idea that we've talked about as well and would be a good thing for us to reconsider when we do the next round of frames. Cool. I think that covers all the questions that I caught up with on chat. If anyone has any other questions that we haven't discussed, last call for them. Going once, going twice. Okay, thanks everyone for coming today. We will stop the recording here. And as always, if we didn't get to your question, feel free to post on Farcaster and we will get to it.